the image that you're currently looking at is likely to go down as one of the most famous political photos for the last 30 years. My name is Cooper Brown. I'm here with my good friend Zach Roper, and we are about 24 hours away from the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. For those who are unaware, Donald Trump was speaking in Pennsylvania yesterday, and in the midst of his rally, gunshots could be heard. Donald Trump turned and then was presumably struck, grabbed the side of his head, took a knee down to the ground, was there for a little bit as Secret Service came and swarmed him, eventually able to getting him to his feet. Luckily, he was fine. It was merely a grazing bullet wound past his ear. But with blood drawn from his ear, dripping down his face, he was able to accomplish one of the most amazing things that I've seen as a young person getting involved in politics, and that was him standing up, being able to get a bit of space in between the Secret Service agents, getting his fist in the air, and yelling "Fight, fight, fight," which was one of the most amazing displays that I had seen from a political figure like that in my entire lifetime. He is then pushed outside and then taken to a vehicle and then evacuated away from the scene. And it's a pretty remarkable instance that we're currently living through. We have not had an attempted presidential assassination since that of Ronald Reagan in 1981, which is over 40 years ago. And it feels weird to be living in that kind of time. And obviously, we're still very, very shortly removed from the event. And so information is still slowly being divvied out. But I think it's really important to capture our initial first impressions and how we feel during this instance. So, Zach, tell me kind of how you were feeling when you heard this news.
I mean, I was shocked, Cooper. I was really shocked about what took place after I heard about the assassination. I mean, I heard it through text, so I was really shocked. But what I was also kind of shocked about, but actually kind of reassured, maybe not my support of Trump, but my understanding of how he's as a leader, is the way he got up. Now, you explained it kind of perfectly that obviously it wasn't initially what happened, like he went down and then he went up, that it took a little bit, but then he went up. But what it shows that he was trying to compel the crowd and, by saying fight, 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 it really shows his character and his leadership. And I think he's always used that to a certain extent in this past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Not only through his assassination attempt, but we talk about one of his first indictments in Atlanta, his infamous photo, right? That it was taken over there. But now we see, I think this is even a more infamous photo. I think this might be an historic photo that will be in the history books, really. I remember one commentator saying that the incident that took place, the picture with the American flag in the background and the Secret Service agents on him, is comparable to the Battle of Iwo Jima when the American troops are holding that American flag. Now, I don't know if that's what's going to happen in the future, but at the moment, it does seem so historic, and that's how I perceive it as.
Right. It's clearly not going to be that famous. Like, we're not going to have a memorial of that, in DC. But obviously, it is a hugely important, remarkable photo. I mean, the photographer to be able to take that was like perfect timing. But I have to totally agree with you that to have the wherewithal to, in that moment of you being shot at, not knowing if there are other people going to be shooting back at you, if there are other people there in the crowd attempting to, continue on with the assassination attempt, to then go out and to provide a bit of like reassurance to the crowd that you're okay and that really seizing that opportunity, that's something you don't train for. That's something that just people have. And some people have and some people don't. And I'm not trying to like rub Trump's shoulders on anything, but a lot of people don't know how they will react in situations where there's chaos and confusion, especially when you hear a bullet whizzing by your face. And there are few men that have had the strength to actually rise up and kind of actually make light of the situation and turn it into something kind of unifying and frankly emotional. Seeing that, a very hilarious tweet that I saw earlier was from Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, and he described the photo where Trump's got his fist in the air and there's blood down his face and there's the American flag in his background, and he says, I got to be honest, that's one of the most badass things I've ever seen, and he is 100% right. And for someone who's like a progressive lunatic like him, like for him to even recognize that
Yeah.
is really apparent because it's just a really powerful thing. But we do know a little bit of information, particularly about the shooter. We know his name. We know he was a 21-year-old who had lived in Pennsylvania, but about an hour away, I believe. He was using an AR style rifle, and that I believe it was purchased from his father. We don't know if he was currently acting alone or if there were multiple people. That is still to be determined. He was a registered Republican, apparently. He was not old enough to vote in any election, but he had donated money to a progressive cause or a left-wing cause. So it sounds like to me that registration was probably done by a family member of some kind, because it takes a lot for someone to donate, and to donate to a left-wing organization means he was clearly of that political spectrum.
Yeah, and I mean, going off of what you said about the shooter, he fits the profile of someone who would commit a mass shooting. In incidents in similar, obviously not similar to an assassination attempt, but he apparently, there was some footage going around about his fellow classmates, and they were talking about how he was bullied a lot in high school, and he was a very quiet person. So that in itself kind of fits kind of the assumptions that what a shooter would do in a situation. So that's on one hand. I think we will also talk about something that I think people are perplexed about, is that how we really let this really take place to Trump in the first place. Now, was there a malicious attempt, or was there an incompetent aspect to it? Now, there was an interview on Fox News. Jesse Walters was interviewing someone, an ex-Secret Service agent called Don Borgino, and he was talking about how the stuff that was taking place, that what they're trained for, that he wouldn't allow it under some circumstances. That the fact that there were shooters on top of buildings, on white picket buildings across the yard. Now, he thinks that it was troubling that it took him so long to react to a situation like that, or that there was someone over there in that vicinity that was allowed to shoot. Now, again, in the defense of Secret Service, there were Secret Service agents who, right after the shot took place against Trump, they handled the situation very well and shot down the shooter. So that's true. But the question is like, I mean, how can we really assess why this took place in the first place? Was it incompetence?
Yeah, I actually agree a lot with that, where there was a ton of mistakes being done by the Secret Service agents. I will start by prefacing, which I neglected to mention, that there was a first initial volley of gunfire that had occurred, and then about 3 seconds later, there was another volley of gunfire. That second likely coming from the counter sniper of the Secret Service shooting across the yard at the assassin, as you want to say. And yeah, absolutely, there's a ton of questions going on about how does something like this happen? What is the failure of the Secret Service in allowing something like this to happen? Which there are some answers to these things where, for example, people are complaining about, how do you not spot this person that's sitting on this white roof holding this rifle? And in actuality, they were spotted. Apparent protocols dictates that for a person to be, once they are spotted by the Secret Service counter sniper team, they are then meant to report that information, and then an investigation is supposed to go of people on the ground to go and basically figure out what's going on and extract the person or whatever it is. And it was in between that time when they were calling to have someone go and investigate him that the shots were fired. So it's not like the shooter was there for 10, 15 minutes at a time. There's some pretty horrific videos of people on the ground taking video of him on the rooftop there. But the time in between was pretty quick. Where as soon as they had seen him, protocol also dictates that the counter sniper is not allowed to fire at the person until they fire first. Which you can argue, why is that allowed? That might be a rule that needs to be changed, but at least it has a legitimate reason where if it's a person that doesn't have a rifle, maybe they have like a telescope or binoculars, you can't just shoot people like that. So you have to send somebody there to investigate what's going on. And in that process, did they start opening fire into the crowd? Where, which we also failed to mention that an individual was killed and another one wounded. But so there are some questions that obviously have come up about how you let this thing happen, but there was clearly an issue going on with the Secret Service. It has been reported for the last several months that they've been engaging in DEI hires, which I can't imagine a worser place to have DEI hires when you're having people to actually their job being to protect high value targets like presidents and former presidents. I mean, we don't have a lot of them. And so I feel like you should be able to get the best of the best, but apparently this is just another case of DI hires really dropping the ball and potentially costing the former president and potentially future president's life.
Yeah, and I think that's a great understanding of the situation on the ground. I think there was a specific detail, like it was like the first day on the job. It was to guard President Trump during the rally. So I thought that's also a situation to worry about. Why would you have someone the first day of the job to guard a president? But more on top of that, I think the reaction towards this incident, towards a president getting shot, should be more of a unifying aspect for all Americans. And I think that we kind of overestimated the reaction, especially to the people who have, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, because I think the fact remains on the ground, they reacted it very poorly. If Trump was shot maybe like a couple centimeters to the right, he would have been dead. So I think we have to, obviously he wasn't, but we have to take into account that. The reaction on a lot of people on TikTok specifically, individual users saying that, like, oh man, I wish Trump was dead. This was their one shot of doing it. I mean, the thing is, this is a sitting president, right? And I think, that kind of reaction not only demonstrates, I just dislike the president, but it also kind of shows that there's a division between Americans. Because if no, but hear me out. Because if you
no, 100%, there's definitely a division in America.
There's a division.
That is saying it very mildly.
Yeah. It is very mildly. It is, because there is a strong division. But the thing is, if you want a president dead, a sitting president dead. I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a president as hated as Trump in terms of on the left. So I think that's something we have to take into account. And the fact is, if you want someone that dead, there's obviously a growing problem within the division of the United States. That the fact is, we have to find some sorts of commonality. I mean, even Biden spoke against this incident. I mean, we heard about talking about how you would want to talk to Trump on the phone. We heard about you were talking about the Young Turks, but also Bill Maher also had he was doing stand up at the time, and he condemned these attacks. But if we have people on one political aisle saying we want a president dead, that's just going to make a whole lot of issues worse for this upcoming election, because if we don't trust our our democratic election process, because it seems like this is what's going to happen. We're going to contest each other, we're going to attack each other consistently for these upcoming election cycles, and I don't think that's the way we should handle a situation like this. A situation like assassination, this should be an attempt to understand that we are all Americans, that we might have different political views, that we might view the world in a different way, but that we could come together in showing that, it's a huge problem for all Americans that a sitting president gets shot.
Right. And I think the way you come about an instance like this is because that the country's been so fractured, and that you have people like Joe Biden and his administration and members of the media saying that this person is literally Hitler. He is a threat to our democracy, and you say that over and over and over again, and eventually people start thinking that, oh my goodness, I got to do something about this. And so that, in my opinion, is probably the likely cause of this. And it means that some of these people have a little bit of culpability on them because they're the ones ratcheting up the tensions in America,
Right.
and getting people to fear Donald Trump, which
Right.
again, there is nothing to fear. He's already been president. We've had him for 4 years,
Yeah.
right? So we know what he's going to do. That's not going to change. But it's this again, Trump derangement syndrome that is just turned up on Channel 11, and the only campaign that Joe Biden and his team are running on is that Trump is literally Hitler. That's it, and it's that type of rhetoric that is causing people to kind of lose their minds, and it reminds me very similarly to the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, where that was done in I think March of 1981, which was very early on in his first term, and Reagan was seen as like a war hawk, and that his election meant World War III and a guaranteed nuclear conflict with the Soviet Union. And people were going to be, they were saying that on election night that the missiles are probably on their way right now. And there was fear that he was going to destroy the world,
Yeah.
which obviously did not end up being the case. He was actually the one to actually end the Cold War and allow the Soviet Union to crumble. But it was that fear and that push from the mainstream media that caused crazy people to want to attempt the life of the president at the time. And it is also a remarkable trait, even with Ronald Reagan, where he was able to, like I was saying before, where there's instances where you show a little bit of yourself, and Trump did that, where he put his fist in the air and showed, remarkable courage and stuff like that. Reagan did the exact same thing, but with his humor, where he was at the hospital, moments away from death, and he looked at all the surgeons. He says, "I hope you're all Republicans,"
Yeah.
or he's waking up from the anesthesia, and the nurse is over him, and he says, "Please don't tell Nancy about us." Right? It's things like that show a bit of your personality trait, and it's hard to do that in times of stress. But Donald Trump was able to do that, and I think that was why he was able to capture that moment so perfectly well when his life was, again, like you said, inches away from being lost.
Yeah, you're going off of Reagan. I thought there was another funny incident with him. Like there was, I think it was a month after after the assassination attempt against his life, and he was in Berlin, and like there was like a balloon popped in the middle of this thing. It was like, you missed. It's like, I thought that was hilarious. Like the kind of PTSD you probably experienced from that incident. But going off of what you're talking about, the TDS aspect, I think it's hugely important, and what we're talking about, the reason why the shooter probably did what he did, right? And obviously you could blame the media. I would say it's probably hugely to blame for this this kind of propaganda going to the minds of young people. But whether it is what I spoke about earlier, the good people on all sides, hoax, or Trump's involvement, or January 6th, or that he says everyone should drink bleach, stuff that's obviously false. But to say Trump's a racist or Trump's a fascist and stuff, that kind of rhetoric, it will put someone in that kind of mindset that if I shoot Trump, I'll be like a savior or something. But obviously, the person who did that is obviously has problems. People who commit these assassination attempts generally have issues. But it makes sense that if you instill all this into young people, that they would be irrational about it, and then they would do kind of impulsive actions like shooting someone like that. So I think that's a failure on the part of our media to tell the truth, and rather than have, whether it's for ratings or profit, the reason why they did it. But I think that's paramount to talk about what we have to do in order to stop another incident like this taking place in the future. But I think moving away from that, I think we should talk about how Trump capitalized on this incident, because not only obviously what we were talking about, him raising his fist up in the air, whether that was a political maneuver or whether that was he was just thinking in the moment, it's obviously going to help him in the next election. And I think that's what we should talk about now. Like, how is this going to help him in
Well,
without really.
we'll end off this because we're running
Yeah,
out of time. But immediately I saw when I had learned that he was okay,
yeah,
and I had watched the video of all that stuff. My immediate impression was that Trump has won. Like there, I don't. He was already winning in the polls
yeah.
by a wide margin. He was looking to slap Joe Biden around. At this point, I don't think Donald Trump loses more than 47 states. That I think it's a blowout now because I think the support he has amongst Republicans to go out in droves and vote for him, I think will be remarkable. And I think if the election was held tomorrow, he might win all 50 states. But that's all the time we have right now, Zach. So I appreciate this kind of spur of the moment, but this is important time to talk about this stuff. So I really appreciate you being there.
Of course. Yeah, it was good talking to you too, Cooper.